Okay, welcome everyone. I'm so happy that you made it to day two. I know that 5 days is a big commitment, so I just want to honor that and let you know that, like, I realize that. So I'm also happy that in the dead of winter we have a way to connect and kind of talk to each other as artists and think about some of these ideas. I always think of the year in a little bit of a numerological way as well, like, the number one, and this, I talk about this in my podcast, but 1 January, it's the seed of everything. And it's sort of where the seed is under the ground and, you're dreaming about what's going to happen next and how that tree is going to grow. So even though it's cold, a lot is happening and we're dreaming and doing a lot of thinking about what is coming up. So that's what we're doing here together. And it's really nice to have people, like-minded souls, to sort of bounce things off and understand that's where we're at as artists. So what I will do is ask everyone to mute. And then as I go into the presentation, I will continue this. Just let me make sure I can see everything. Okay, there we go. All right. Now, right now, it looks like you can see my screen, and then you can see people at the top. As long as you can see my main screen, please let me know. Yes? Okay, good. I just want to make sure that my screen is shared a little bigger today so we can read and work through a few things that are going to come up. So, okay. All right. So today, first, I want to just review what we talked about yesterday briefly. I love this painting. I have to say, really a sucker for those Victorian, romantic paintings of the Renaissance and of the past. And this is Dante and Virgil in one of the levels of hell, as Virgil is leading Dante through all of these different, strange and terrible views of the world. And what I do promise from this week, for this week, that we will go to some different levels of your psyche, that you get to decide how deep you go into that, that maybe your journal work will take you into new places, that I created this, so I am the Virgil in this situation, but also I rely on my friends as guides as well. So it's kind of nice, this complementary color set of the blue and the orange, to know that we are like together in purpose. All right, so review of yesterday. First, I talked about the four hats concept, and then I talked about the hero's journey a little bit, and then I talked about the 8 creative elements. So again, the four hats is sort of a way to think about a business or a project as moving from inner work to outer work and from foundation into a future. And another circle, another cycle, is our favorite, the hero's journey, where we are unwilling as a hero. We are called to action and called to adventure. We gain supernatural aid before we even go into the unknown world of the trials and the abyss. So we're going to talk a lot more about that today, and I'm going to talk about it in terms of these 8 creative elements: air, fire, metal, earth, wood, water, and void and light. We know these well because this is the color palette. And also, of course, I've made my own sort of version of this, but I really encourage you to recreate this your own way if you want. So yesterday, I asked you to do a journal prompt, and it was very simple. Wasn't a big job, hopefully. One was to list 5 things that you want that you already have. And that could be anything from um, from running water, because a lot of people don't have that in the world, to, a Bentley, right? Things that you already have that you want. Um, so there was that. And then the second journal prompt was to list 5 things that you want that you don't have. Now, we are talking about pure, unadulterated desire, ego desire, right? Just whatever you want to say about this. If you want to have a pied-à-terre apartment in Paris just for your own personal use, you can do that. So this doesn't mean that you are going to get these, that you think these are quote unquote possible, but they can be things that you want that you don't have. So I'm actually going to give you another minute to work on this and write these down. So I will put on a timer for this again, just to make sure that people have a minute for this. And then we will talk about it for a little minute before we move on. So I'm setting a timer. You won't see the numbers, but I'll just set a timer for 1 minute. Okay, so we might have our list from yesterday or a short list that you just started today. And what I love is for people to just put in the chat if there was anything that surprised you that came up through this exercise, something that came out of nowhere that you didn't realize that you wanted or that you hadn't even thought of. It can be funny, random, outlandish, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'll just look at the chat if anyone decides that they want to put that in. Okay, clarity. Oh my gosh. Now, clarity. Elizabeth, is that something you already have, or is that something that you don't have that you would like? That's a great question, huh? Um, because sometimes we have clarity and sometimes we don't. But it looks like, actually, Elizabeth, if you'd like to, you can unmute and talk about that for a second.
Hi. Yeah, that's what I need. I see so many directions and so many things over the past like 5 years of my life that everything has shifted, everything has changed, and I'm at a point where I have to self-start and figure out where to go next, how to do so many things. And a lot of them are very complicated, like nonprofit organization structural questions and estate planning and what to do with a 30-year-old tennis court. I mean, things that you need expertise for. So I would say, in addition to clarity, it's expertise. Like, I don't need a coach. I need someone who actually is going to tell me how it is in specific ways.
Right.
And I find I've been finding a lot of great expertise, but the more I find, the more I need right now.
Right. Right. It's very, well, in a sense, you have some clarity. You know, we have different kinds of problems, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we have problems that an expert can help with. And once you know that you need an
Yeah.
expert, that is some kind of clarity. So at
So
least you
maybe
have that
that's
right
what I
now.
need. I need
for different
More
kinds of
experts.
y- for different kinds of problems, right?
Yeah.
And some things only we can solve for ourselves. So, yeah, and we all probably have both kinds of problems, right? So that's yeah, okay, that's really interesting. All right, we have Anne has self-acceptance of my limitations within which I function best. That's interesting thing to want. Anne, please tell me a little bit more about this before we dive into the rest, if you feel like it.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's just realizing that I put an awful lot on myself, and I don't actually function really well when I have all of that going on. So it's really seeing what I can, really understanding my own energy levels, and how to best work with that, and not thinking I can do so much more that actually just makes me really stressed, and then I can't really do anything. So I'm really looking at accepting my limitations, but that doesn't mean that I won't be able to really jump into those things I do concentrate on. That's what I'm hoping for more. Instead
Yeah.
of being so spread out, I'm going to hopefully be more focused.
Yes, very good. Yeah. So it's interesting that the desire, the feeling of desire for self-acceptance of limitations is really interesting, right? It's kind of a paradox. It's like I want to want less in a sense, right? I want to think that I can do or want to do less. Um,
Yeah, and just on that, just in terms of art and everything, I've really narrowed down how that's going to work in terms of just doing some, one-off monoprints and concentrating on them for now,
yeah,
and and not worrying about the rest. So it's really simplifying and sort
right.
of advancing. Yeah.
Well, that's so good. Thank you so much. Yes. Okay. So we'll be moving through this and kind of returning to these ideas, but I also want to think about why we're here in this group, this situation. And I want you to kind of take all of those things that you said and you wanted and you talked about and you thought about and try to sort of think of it as written on a chalkboard that you could erase. Okay. So taking those things, understanding those things as sort of the next phase of your life and wiping that clean and saying, okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this. What do you really want? Including, that clarity and the if you had like the limitations, if you had the things you wanted and you were able to get the things that you wanted, what would it be? Try to be specific as possible. And what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Now, this is a very small part of what we're going to talk about today, but I just want to kind of seed that in your mind. So if you knew you couldn't fail, if you knew there were no blocks to it, what would you do? We all know there are blocks, so just work with me for a minute here, okay? All right, so 2 minutes. And describe it. You can talk about it as like a perfect day or a perfect experience or a state of being with your business or your house or your art or whatever. Okay, so just think about that. Okay. All right. So now we're just going to sort of dive in to the next part. And I will come back to this and talk to you about it, but I kind of want it to sit for a minute. Okay, it's great. You can put it in the chat. Please do if you want, and we can kind of come back to it. All right. So today we're going to talk about with these sort of the 8 elements, okay? And this hero's journey, it has like 3 main parts of the departure, the hero leaving, the hero going down into the abyss, and then the hero returning. Okay, so with today, I'm going to talk about 2 parts of that. One is seeding the dream, which is kind of what we're doing just with this thing you wrote down as an example. Okay, you can do this over and over with different things because it's kind of a specific process. And then I'm going to talk to you about your patterns of power. Your patterns of power, like your winning strategy, what you've done so far to find success, and why that might not really work to take you to sort of the next level. Okay, so part of the reason for that is why we really don't always, get what we want or we find it so hard is, of course, our brains. Our brains often are our best ally and our worst enemy because we're caught up in that mental drama. It may not be the problem when you need an expert for those problems, but it usually is a problem when ourselves are the expert and we need to decide what we're going to do next, or we need to create something new. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about these first 2. The dreaming the seed, this is sort of like the air. Okay, this is where we dream up things in our mind and we have all of these ideas that we want to do. And then we're going to talk about these patterns of power. And this all happens before we go down into the abyss. The abyss is this threshold that we must cross in order to be able to have the full experience of that hero's journey. And we need a key in order to get there in my construct of this. Okay, so first, we've already sort of thought about dreaming that seed or seeding that dream, okay, in our mind. And we do this part really well. We can dream up all the things that we want. The second part is all about why we get stuck. Okay, so the patterns of power are sort of our constant. In human design, they call it how we are. Oh, can't think of the word, but how we're patterned into our lives, right? The social constructs, the cognitive patterns in our lives, from our family, from emotional patterns, from cognitive patterns that we learn, from the stories that we tell ourselves, also from the bigger myths, from sexual orientation, expectations and gender roles and all of that kind of stuff. So these are those patterns that are with us as before we even depart. And I think, of course, especially for women, but of course for men too, because they're expected to be the hero. They're expected to provide and all of that. We know that everyone has their own sort of patterns of power that we're supposed to have. And I want to point out that in this first part of this, what we call the monomyth, which is Joseph Campbell's story, what he called his hero's journey. He didn't call it the hero's journey, he called it the monomyth, because it was all of the myths from all over the world layered together sort of into one, because they all had the same characteristics. So he called it mono, as one myth. And that may not, be totally true as we come to learn, as we learn more about anthropology and sociology and all of that. But for our purposes, it will serve. So the monomyth, we often get stuck in what I call the mini myth. So the mini myth is the fact that we get stuck in departure. So as I said, Dorothy she wants to run away, right? She wants to run away to Oz or wants to run away from this terrible, boring farm in Kansas. So she runs away and the storm kind of starts to blow up and she ends up in the gypsy's wagon. And the gypsy is sort of a quasi supernatural aid for her. The gypsy sees that she's run away from home, so he sort of like makes these assumptions, and then sees in his crystal ball that Auntie M is home and worried about her, and so she then jumps up and she runs home again. So this is where Dorothy was stuck in her departure, stuck in the mini myth of departure. And so this was really brought out to me when I was talking to a friend who no one here knows and who wouldn't mind if I share part of this story, who had a lifetime of having a child who was ill. And that child grew up and eventually had some healing, but eventually died. So that person was what I felt was not stuck in departure. She was stuck in a different place on this wheel. So most people, when we have, your regular growing up and you go to school and you get married and you decide what you want to do, you get your job and you do all the things for gender roles, personal safety, social expectations, and family patterns, we can get stuck in that pattern of success, right? So it seems supernatural in a way. It seems like the hero's journey because we go through a lot of strain and stress and learning and change. But often what it does is keeps us in this pattern of success. So we get stuck in this original sort of like mini myth of success, acceptance, and comfort. And it feels like there's something more, like there's something that we are missing. Okay, so I'm going to go to my other slide here. I wanted to point out is that my friend was stuck in a different place on this myth. She was stuck in the pain and the drama of a child who was ill, who kind of always came almost back and then would get healed and then would get sick and healed and sick. And so she was not stuck in this top part of successes and sort of mini failures and the next drama of regular life. She was stuck down in the abyss. And in a sense, we all sort of get addicted to the place that becomes comfortable for us. So in her case, and we talked about this, and we were both like, this was a big insight that she felt she was addicted or stuck in this drama. So it was harder for her to come out of this trauma once her child had passed away and go back into the regular world, right? Because she had been in the abyss for so long. So either way, whether you're stuck in the abyss or you're stuck in the mini myth of success, something might feel like it's missing. Like there's fear, confusion, disorientation, anxiety, or failure. And all of that comes from us being stuck in a couple of ways. Okay, so in one way, we could be stuck in the pleasure and stuck in the success. In another way, we can be stuck in the pain or stuck in the anxiety. So I'd love to just hear in the comments if anyone has felt this, where you have gone through, cycles where you feel like you're stuck in pleasure or stuck in pain. And if you feel like commenting on this, I would love to hear that. I know I have. I know that in college, right, I think this is the early 20s, and we do get sort of stuck in this pain of where we move out and we discover the world, and then we realize that like everything feels dramatic and traumatic. And so we use our mind drama kind of to buffer and to bond with our friends and to feel the pain of growing up. And so we get stuck in there. Let's see, never stuck in pleasure, stuck in pain, several cycles over the years. Yes, stuck in the comfort zone. Why bother? Isn't life great anyway? Yes, exactly. It seems to be a cycle with varying degrees of stuckness and length of time. As a newly retired person, I feel stuck in the pleasures of indolence. Yes. So stuck in pleasure, it's the known world. Everyone expects this, right? Our obligations, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. You know, I need to keep a routine, I need to do what people want me to, turns into buffering, turns into sort of us keeping us from what we really want to do. And this is the devil you know, okay? Measuring up to other people's expectations, right? This is the devil you know. If we're stuck in pain, it's the devil you don't know, the devil you don't want to know, but often it becomes this devil you know, okay? So now as we kind of go into this, these patterns of pain, what I would like to do is help you. I've done this work myself a little bit, and so I want to share this with you. And this is from, I'm going to hold this up, I don't know if you can see it, but it's from a book called The Last Word on Power. And I'm not sure you can see this cover, but I'll show you this in a minute, by Tracy Goss. So there's a great way that she talks about this whole process. And she talks about our winning strategy. What has kept us successful up to this point? And this is why it might not work for us. Okay, so your winning strategy is, I always listen for, it says 1 and 1, but it means 1 and 2. So as to. Okay, so I'll give you an example because this is kind of hard for me to understand at first. In my case, I always listen for, and this has been throughout my life, ever since I was a child. I always listen for problems I can solve by swooping in and helping quickly, so as to be the hero and escape. Because it's not that I want to help people solve the problem. What I'm avoiding is, or why I'm doing that so quickly and helping, is so I can avoid being trapped. So I thought this was really interesting for myself. I always wondered, why can't I stick to one thing? Or why do I want always to sort of like have different jobs or whatever? And yes, it's part of my nature to be the quick start, the Kolbe quick start, if you've done the Kolbe test with me. Or, the information person, if in the Kolbe you might be a high information person, you love information, you always look for, data, that I can go find data for people, right? So I can know all the answers. What am I trying to avoid? Losing control, maybe, or being dumb, or not knowing all the answers, right? So we all listen for something. And this is sort of a quick starts winning strategy. I'm always listening for something I can go in and solve, so I can go in and be the magician and do smoke and mirrors, solve the problem quickly, be the hero, and not so I can solve the problem, but so I can escape. So I don't get stuck, so I don't get trapped. Okay? Now, What's the problem with that winning strategy? It's gotten me where I am. Okay, I've won. I've had lots of different experiences. I've gotten to experience a lot of different things. But the other results it has brought me is it's easy to help others. It's hard to follow through on my own projects. And why? Because what am I avoiding? I'm avoiding being trapped by myself too. Okay, so I want you to think about this for a minute. What I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I would like you to answer these 3 questions. Or 2 questions. Well, 3. I always listen for, in any room, any situation, any job or home or whatever. What do you listen for so you can do something? Does that mean, I think you know what I mean by now. So I'm going to just give you these 2 minutes. I always listen for something so as to I can do something. And then what are you avoiding? So in order to avoid something, okay? So even if you don't totally buy into this concept, what I'd like you to do is just try it on for size today for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes. Okay, all right. So I would love to hear what people came up with if you are so brave and willing to share. So I'm going to quit sharing my screen for a minute before I return to sort of finish out this, and then we're going to also have some more conversation. So let's see. All right. So let's do. Who would like to speak? Who would like to raise their hand? Matt, you're there. You're on my screen. Do you want to
I
talk?
have to say something. I've been thinking about everything we're talking about today quite a bit because I personally feel like I'm somewhere crossing the abyss.
Good.
What I think I'm doing and what I think I'm listening for is pieces of information that I can take to solve problems I need to move forward in my creative business and practice and life and do so in a financially sustainable way. So I think my brain is tuned to listen for all those pieces of information that help that specific objective, which right now in my life feels like everything. So the second part of the question, I think partly it's because I'm so hard on myself that I try to over prepare for a lot of things, and that these pieces of information that I think I'm taking in, and oh, I can help you with that, or oh, let me see if I can do this, for my wife or daughter or whomever. And I think a lot of the times it's trying to solve something that perhaps I know how to, instead of going into that unknown space where I operate most of the time in my creative journey. So I think it's a little bit of I think it's avoiding the unknown a little bit. So I think it's not necessarily I'm in the happy place, but I think in this example, it's perhaps the stuck in pleasure, maybe because it is comfortable. It's what I know. It's, oh, I know how to help my wife. I know how to help my daughter, my family, whatever. What I don't know how to do is sell my next chair or book my next commission. So if I'm helping them, it's going to make I know I can help them, and I guess maybe I'm thinking that will help me feel a little bit better about my own journey.
Okay, good. So what emotion do you think you're avoiding?
Which ones?
List a few.
Uh, um,
I know you're down for this, so.
yeah, no, I totally am. And I think about this constantly, every day. But wording it the way that would make sense in a group, I think, I think I need another minute on that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to ask everybody the same question.
No. I'm hard on myself. I'm trying to work through that and help others. And I guess maybe I'm trying to show an action or behavior, or what's the right word for teaching? Model the right activity or behavior. Not right. That's not the word I want to use. I guess I'm trying to do for others what I struggle to do for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. In order to avoid, because you are avoiding feeling.
Avoiding the uncomfortableness of going out and marketing, which I don't want to do, or
And why don't you want to do it?
because I'm hard on myself and I am my worst critic. And my
And
worst
now I'm curious about that. Is it because of how you're doing it and you're critiquing how you're doing it, or is it because you're afraid you're going to fail at it?
I currently on a daily basis go between feeling like I'm being successful and failing. And I'm trying to always make sure I'm actually being successful, but also mentally feeling like I'm being successful, or helping myself to my big obstacle is I'm hard on myself. So I'm really trying to ease up, and I try not to be hard on others. I don't think I am. I think I'm way 100 times harder on myself.
Okay, this is perfect. This is
Okay.
perfect. Okay,
Help
because
me focus here
no,
a
no,
little
no.
bit
I
on
just wanted to see you kind of work through it a little bit because this is exactly sort of where, when I talk about this key, how the key turns. And before I listen to have someone else talk, I'm going to just share this slide with you that maybe kind of outlines it a little bit. So the idea is that in order to sort of move to that next level and not be stuck in this pleasure of solving problems and being the hero, we have to sort of address what we're avoiding. And to me, it sounds like you're avoiding the same thing that everybody else is avoiding. We don't want to fail. We don't want to feel the emotion of failure often. And so that emotion of failure is the emotion, maybe you have other emotions too, but that's the one you're managing, right? So in order to manage that emotion of failure, you're trained not to fail.
Yeah.
which seems really obvious. But the key is that in order to make your way through the abyss and actually really get into the abyss, you think you're in the abyss, but you're not. This is the problem, right? You're stuck up here. You're just doing the baby steps up here and you keep going around these little circles, right? To really go down there, you're going to have to accept that emotion of failure is going to be full on and accept it and say, oh, I want to feel the feeling of failure. Instead of keep telling yourself, I'm being nice to myself and I'm going to feel like I'm succeeding. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's an example. If you're feeling trapped, trap yourself. If you're afraid of failure, fail way more. If you're afraid of losing control, give up control. If you're afraid of being unloved, just know that they will hate you and love yourself more. You're afraid of being ignored, they will ignore you. See yourself more. So this is the idea that the cave you fear, that emotion, that feeling of failure, holds the key to the treasure you seek. Because once we can accept those that we are human, that all humans have all emotions, and that the emotion of failure is going to be the one that's going to get us down into that abyss and embrace the feeling of failure by trying new things over and over again and not feeling like that reflects somehow on you as a human being, right? Because that's the issue. We think when we feel failure, that means that we as a human being are a failure, right? Which of course we're not, because we're just trying something new, and of course we need to fail a bunch. Okay, so that is kind of what I'm getting to here. Matt, do you have any comments or thoughts about that? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, don't ask me that question. I might talk for a bit.
That's okay.
No, I just real quick. Hopefully, I'll say this briefly. That makes a lot of sense. And when I hear these things on this next page that you currently have on the screen, it does help click a little bit. And what you just said, like maybe you're stuck up at the beginning and not in the abyss, and maybe you need to think like this is all unlocking some interesting thoughts in my head.
Okay.
And I just want to say that this is going in a very cool direction, I think.
Okay.
But back to that, what we had just written, like I had written like, what do I really want? And I'm sitting here reading what's currently on the screen thinking, oh yeah, like, okay, like I see what I want. I see rejection along the way, but like that's part of it. So go do it.
Right. Why is it so hard? Yeah. Why do we have to make this class about it? Right. Why can't we just all do it? It's true. It's because of our brains, right? Because on a daily basis, our brains tries to get us to stop doing things, like stop doing everything. And so it'll throw up all these smoke screens. So that's why we have to trick it with these types of understanding that it tries to make us think that we've gone into this full hero's journey, but it hasn't. We haven't. We're still only here. But we still feel like something's wrong, right? If I'm so smart, why am I not successful? If I'm so smart, why can't I lose weight? If I'm so smart, why can't I make the art I want? It's because we haven't really let ourselves go into this hard part of the abyss and addressing those emotions and accepting and feeling those deeper emotions of failure and of being out of control and of trying something totally new, right? And then, of course, we don't want to be stuck here either. So as the week goes on, I'm going to show us how to sort of move through the abyss and some strategies for what that means. Okay, so I'm just going to open it up. I'm going to take this terrible slide off. And I want you to know, before I leave, just that your brain is your best ally and you can work with it, okay? Quickly, I have this concept. I want to share this concept of contra freeloading. I call it the struggle button. This is a scientific experiment where they put the rats in the cage and they train it to hit the button. The rat will hit the button, learn how to do it. And I love that. Like, you imagine a cat doing this? No, never. um, so the cat will will never do it, right? But the rat will. Okay. So what happens when you hit the button? The rat, it creates in our minds, in the rat's mind, safety. We feel like we work for it. We are certain we're going to get a kibble. When they take the button away and put out just like a free bowl of all the abundance in the world, the rat will go eat from it for a little while, but then it'll go back to the button. And it goes back to the button. Why? Because the free bowl creates uncertainty. I don't know what all this food is here for. Is it safe? Is it for me? It may all end, right? That's why when you get a bunch of money or success, we all think, oh, it's going to end. I don't deserve this. I'm an imposter type of thing. We don't feel like we deserve it because we're not doing that work of punching the button. And we have the fear of too much. So this is what, the struggle button is. So this idea of, if you've worked with me before and we've talked about like the model, right? The self-coaching model. In this case, the struggle button gives you this unintentional model of the circumstance, I'm an artist. The thought is, artists struggle. Therefore, to be an artist, I must struggle. Therefore, I must be an artist. But struggle creates these feelings of anxiety, difficulty, and frustration. And so then those emotions shoot us into these actions of spinning, inaction, overthinking, worrying about people's perceptions, etc., resulting in creating the atmosphere in your mind of the struggling artist. Right? It makes sense. We just get to keep pushing that struggle button. Now, what if we went here? This may be too much text for you to read, but same circumstance. And what if you thought, and the only thing we can change in this scenario is our mind, is our thoughts. Art is easy and creative, abundant, free, and endless. I can't believe I just get to make this stuff up out of my mind. And I'm making money with my brain. I can innovate, solve problems. I can do all these things and I love it. Gives you the feeling of confidence, excitement, and satisfaction. And those emotions drive our actions of painting more often, putting ourselves out there, more comfortably, engaging in a community and all of these things. And then you're creating an atmosphere in your mind where things are easier. But why do we keep going back to here? And this is it, because we want safety. We want to feel like we're working for it, like we're struggling for it, and like there's certainty. Okay, so we go back and forth between these two states. We don't want too much freedom because that feels like overwhelming too. And we don't want too much, struggle. So I hope that sort of gives a little insight into why we keep working, in this zone of like, we don't depart. We may step over the threshold, but then we kind of step back into the cave a little bit. We don't take the real big chances. So now I'm going to stop sharing, and I just want to hear your thoughts today before we finish and we move on to the next stage. Would anyone like to share?
Yeah.
Yes, Susan.
So I feel like, my sense is that we're all responding and relating to what most everyone has said. And I wonder, what's the baseline? What's the subtext? What's underground here? Is it primal animal instinct that above all, I must survive? And if that's part of the answer, how? How does a person move through that?
Yes, I think that's a great thought. And well, this is what I've sort of worked from on my own for several years to sort of figure out. It's like, if I'm so smart, why can't I do these things? And knowing my own brain and understanding how my brain works and what my brain is doing to me on a daily basis is so helpful. I think it's step one. It's awareness, right? Awareness is the first step. When I'm aware, when I'm more aware that everything that I attempt to do, like this class, and then I have it on my schedule to work on it for an hour on Tuesday, and I get to Tuesday and it's on my schedule and I say, yeah, I don't feel like it. Or I have this other thing that's an obligation to somebody else. That's the moment, Susan, right? Or when you say, I'm going to constrain my ideas. I'm just going to work on this one project for 3 days. Okay, I see you.
Yeah.
And you get there and your brain says, but I really want to do this other thing. That's the moment when awareness of what your brain is doing to you on a daily basis, minute by minute, can be helpful. Now, at first, you may not do anything about it. You may just be aware of it. You may watch your brain doing this. But eventually, you may come to understand that and be able to shift it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. I was writing the morning. Was it yesterday morning? I got up at 6 o'clock. I don't know if I said this before. That's how overloaded my brain is lately, right? So I got up and I wrote this massive list of archetypes, characteristics from psychological to the elements of art, trying to deduce what's my next body of work, even though I work myself like a slave driver and I have very little marketplace. I live on an island. Um, and what's my point even? Oh, so I went, okay, so how about doing, I'm just rattling off the thought process. I hope I'm not going to take too
No,
much
no,
time.
it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
just I'll give you a minute.
Yeah. So I said, oh, okay, fine. So I set up instead, I went, okay, fine. You've got 3 potential easels in your front room. I'm sparing you the rest of the tangent if I can.
I'll
So
stop you
as we're
in just a
talking,
minute.
okay, good. So as we're talking, most creatives have this huge, massive brain and this emotional charge and a lot of baggage, and how to clarify time, space, and task. So as you're talking, Shannon, I felt like, okay, I really have to settle down my don't run in the street, you're going to get hurt, and pull in my aperture and not only just set up 3 easels, I'm allowing myself to do that, but work really small and physicalize. When I tell myself have one idea and stay with that in this present moment, do it. Like restrict myself like I'm a child who needs Ritalin.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. You just told everyone what everyone's problem is. Elizabeth, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was just writing down, I mean, totally different, coming at it totally differently, but ending up kind of in the same place, which is not everything has to add up and not everything has to fit together with everything else. Pieces can just be in pieces, and you can have 3 easels, and those 3 things might be 3 completely different series of things that don't have anything to do with each other. And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard. And that's hard for me too. I find I just wrote no more strangling or scuttling or overcomplicating or drowning things. Like, here's a great idea, let's go for it. And then, oh, I have to put this on top of it and I have to add that to it. And what about this thing over here? Doesn't that fit with this? It's like, no, a pear does not belong in a beef stew. But I'm making dinner and this is everything in my kitchen. I have to put everything in it. So I
Yes.
totally,
Yeah.
that really makes sense to me.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah, and
And
so it's not that we
one more thing.
Oh, yes, please.
One more thing. And so on those 3 easels, I did allow myself 3 totally different focuses. So
Good, good, good. That's so great. And that, see, you've created a container where that can happen freely. Whatever can happen in that bubbling cauldron can happen. You can throw in the new eye of newt into that place, but you keep it specifically there. So there's all sorts of tools. And when you asked, how do we do this, right? There are lots of different tools. We create our schedule. We have a coach, right? We take a class. We do all sorts of different things. But for this week, the first 2 days is sort of like the awareness part, understanding what's got you to this point, your winning strategy up to now. And I really want you to dive into this tonight, to think about this winning strategy. And I'll put the slide up again to sort of answer these questions for yourself. What do I do? What do I listen for? How do I work that has gotten me this far? And what am I avoiding? Okay. So when we know what emotion we're avoiding, are we avoiding being out of control because we were always controlled as a child? Maybe, I don't know, right? Whatever it is for you. I grew up in a very strict religion. And so that's why I think I want to break out and not have anybody ever tell me what to do again. So I don't want to be trapped. So now, what's next for me? I have to create a strategy that's not my past winning strategy. It's a new strategy. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. That's the key. We're going to forge the key. Okay? So really dive into this. What has been your winning strategy up to now? How have you gotten all your success? Whether it's being a crazy artist, right? That's all over the place, or whether it's being very detailed or whatever, whoever you are, and what am I avoiding? So that is going to help us forge our key tomorrow. All right, so we are hitting 11:59 my time, and right on time, and I so appreciate your input. I will save the chat so I can look at them. Let me just see if there's anything else. Oh, a quote from our actor from King Lear. The worst is not so long as we can say, this is the worst. I love it. That's a great phrase for entering the abyss. Okay, good. What might a key practical question be to move through? And we talked about that a little bit. We will talk about that more. So what Matt says resonates with me, model problem-solving behavior in the hopes that the person will then help me solve my problem. Very interesting. Yes, very interesting. Like we have to deserve the help, right? We have to solve everybody else's problems first before we can get help. And this is a classic issue of women, but also men. Okay, so these are all these deep psychological things that are in your past, that are in our social structures that we need to unpack. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's input today. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay? Bye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.